makes you so creative, and why is creativity important in your life?
These are fabulous questions. I think I've always been fairly creative because perhaps I've been a little, or felt myself to be a little different. Therefore, I think maybe out the box. I wonder if individuality has got a place in creativity. I was wondering just earlier on if conformity actually dulls down our creativity. So I've done some work with one of my favourite teachers is Dancing Thunder, who tribe, and he said that his people value 3 qualities in humans the most. And I was very interested. I assumed that love was going to be one of them. However, it wasn't. The 3 qualities most valued by his people are compassion, humour, which I love, and creativity. Mm-hmm. And if we think about a word that so many different cultures use for God, whatever that is in your terminology, a lot of different cultures use the word creator. So I think that gives us an idea how important creativity is in life.
Excellent. Yes, I suppose compassion has to come from love. It is derived from love, isn't it? Because without love, it's difficult to be compassionate, isn't it?
Definitely.
And you're absolutely right that there is this link between the creator and creativity, because the ancient Greeks used to think that we as individuals can't be creative. They used to say, well, it's only the gods that can be creative. It's only the gods that have the power to create. And what we can do as mere mortals is just to uncover creativity. We can't be creators, but we can uncover the creativity that already exists in the world. How do you feel about that?
That's very interesting. At first, as you were speaking, I was disagreeing, thinking how we've come from an act of creation when the sperm unite, then we get the zygote, the first human cell, and our entire bodies are recreating themselves every 7 years. Every cell in our body is replaced within 7 years. So the process of creativity is embodied in our being. Creativity is not something we do. It's something we are. It's the way we think. It's everything about us. But I was thinking about this earlier, and I was wondering, what does creativity mean to me? And I took some notes. So I was trying to come up with my own personal definition of what creativity is. So I came up with the expression of inspiration, a convergence of 2 or more factors with some kind of catalyst, a synthesis of divergent forces that together have transformative power. Basically, it's putting inspiration, it's an integration, a synthesis, an alchemy. So if that's the case, then possibly I would actually agree with the Greeks, because where does that spark of the magic in the inspiration, in the alchemy, in the catalyst, where does that come from? Does that come from us, or does that come from beyond? Interesting.
It is interesting, yes, because so it's this whole thing of like, well, we haven't created ourselves, like the sperm and the egg, all of that existed before we did. So we're just discovering or uncovering continuously what already existed. Matter, every element of matter already exists. No one has, they as you say, the synthesis, like people have formed plastics or concrete by putting, using alchemy to put different things together, but all those elements that went to make up all these new things that we've created, all those elements already existed.
Yes, good point. It can be simple things like, at the moment I've got an injured crow. I'm looking after until I can release her, and I think, how is she? What does she need now? And I have to put into the aviary that I built outside. I have to put into that whatever is going to help her move on. Like at the moment, she can hop, but she can't fly. So I have to put branches at different heights. I've got to think what's going to help her most, the qualities in her that's going to help her be free again, which at the moment is if she can fly. So I'm putting the branches at heights that she can hopefully reach, but are going to challenge her a little bit. So I think this is a form of creativity as well. I think that's a sort of like different level of creativity to coming up with some quantum theory, which, if all information is there and we're all just tapping into the same source, then absolutely why should one person claim something? And we know from history in the past that a lot of inventions that have come were attributed first to women, but women were written out of history. So there is a flaw with one person claiming these things.
What happens is that somebody will trademark or copyright something, but somebody else somewhere in the world has already done that many years before, but they haven't bothered to trademark it or to copyright it or to, get the patent for it. And throughout history, there's hundreds of examples of that kind of thing happening,
Yes, definitely.
And what you talk about, this everyday creativity in just using our intelligence to help, animals, or help other human beings, or to help the environment in some way. So those are examples of just everyday creativity, and that differs from that, what they call the big C creativity, is where somebody, it's a creativity which is remarkable and which will stand the test of time. So the things that you're talking about, they will help your birds. And if you did something that was so special that, like, in 50 years' time, people started to do things, or people were still doing things the way that you've designed, that would make it a big C creativity. So creativity needs to stand the test of time in some way, monkey syndrome, isn't it? That one person starts to do things in a different way, and then 10 people do, and then 20 people do, and then all of a sudden everyone's doing things in a different way. So that's an example of creativity that stands the test of time, that it actually transforms our culture in some way, doesn't it?
Yes.
I suppose that intrinsically, when we're talking about creativity, we are talking about ethics as being an integral part of creativity, because the opposite, creativity without it being ethical would be more like destruction rather than creativity, wouldn't it?
Yes, but I think it can be difficult to, once something is created, it can be used for good or not. And I don't know if the person that creates it has any say over that.
Yes, that reminds me of the atomic bomb. That's an example, isn't it, of, creativity which is used for, you know, the worst kind of destruction that we can think of. And I think that's, wasn't it Oppenheimer who, after having taken part in this invention, he regretted it because of what it was actually going to be used for. So, but when they were
Yeah.
actually creating the atomic bomb, when they were creating that bomb, and the people who actually continue to create those things, do you think that they are being creative because they're inventing something which is new, which is useful in some way, you know, in their view, because it's useful perhaps as a form of defense? Do you think that makes it creative?
Yes. Yes, I think it is. But it's very interesting you bringing in ethics to it, because the motivation behind that creation might be important as well. If we create something from a heart space because we perceive a need for that thing, then that might lead to, if we have a set of criteria and we're being employed and we're told that a certain outcome is required, which might have been more the case with Oppenheimer.
Yes, because from, you know, I mean, that was, the context was, you know, there was the World War One, World War Two. You know, they were living in that context where there was a lot of fear and a lot of, they felt that defense was very important. So from their point of view, it was ethical to create something which would be a way of protecting lives, and it can be used for a very negative intention as well as the positive. The positive being one of defense, and the negative being one of, you know, aggression and manipulation. And
Yes. I think we're living in dangerous times again, though. There's so
yeah,
much fear being engineered, I'd have to say. So
yeah.
I would be very nervous about what's being created at the moment.
Yes, so it's an interesting thing, isn't it? That for, you know, some people might call it fear and others might call it caution or being alert or being prepared, you know. So again, depending on our perspective, people can label that same feeling in different ways, can't they?
Well, I suppose what I'm talking about is the very definite fear that's being manufactured by the mass media. Um, actually, actually trying to increase the level of fear in the population, which I don't think is a very useful or helpful thing. And if terrorism is our most used word, or one of the most used words at the moment, then I think that implies definite fear rather than caution. Caution sounds quite sensible. Fear and terror? No, not so much. So I suppose that in itself, it's not a healthy or useful one, but it is a creation. We're being told what we should fear and how we should feel about that, which is, I would have a lot of caution about.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because I agree with you. When you first started talking about your was it the indigenous person, when he talked about compassion and creativity and humour, thunder,
Yes,
sorry, I've forgotten the
dancing,
name. Thunder,
dancing,
yeah.
dancing thunder.
Okay. So yeah, so obviously, if the intention arises from compassion, it's going to have a very different quality compared with if the intention comes from a place of fear. So for me, if something arises from compassion or from love or from some of these positive emotions, it's it's going to be ethical. Whereas if something arises from fear, I can't think of an example of how that would be ethical in any way. And perhaps when we're talking about creativity, which arises out of fear, again, I can't think of any good examples of something that is truly creative and it was born from fear. Can you?
No, I can't. And I think that's very interesting point. And it's bringing us perhaps back to what you were first talking about when I said about the three qualities. And when I said how I thought he was going to say love, one of the primary ones. So I was surprised when that wasn't in the three. But you pointed out that love is perhaps the ground of all the rest.
Mm.
And love is the opposite of fear. Fear is the opposite of love. So perhaps we can't possibly expect the same creativity coming from fear as we have coming from love or compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps they're very different animals.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So yes, so if we think of going back to the Greeks when they said that everything already exists, and some people say, well, what exists? Like fear is perhaps the absence of love, that we can't really feel both emotions at the same time. Either we feel love or we feel fear. And that one is the absence of the other, that fear is actually the absence of love, in the same way that dark is the absence of light. Does that resonate with you at all?
Oh, definitely. I find look, with my work, I do a lot of healing, and I've also done a lot of self-healing and looking at my own life and my own emotions and motivations, etc. So that at times when I've been in a lot of emotional pain, interestingly, I've found that it's not possible to feel that pain while I'm feeling love. So if I switch my heart from the pain to love, the pain can't coexist with love, which is quite interesting. So yes, I would agree with that. Definitely.
That is very interesting. So excellent. There's so much more to say, Elizabeth, but I will round that off now so that we've got something to talk about hopefully soon, for our next session. But so today, you've mentioned some very interesting insights into how you've used creativity in your own healing work, especially with your birds, in creating little systems, little structures that will be healing them. And we've touched on this dichotomy between creativity that already exists and whether creativity can ever be ethical if it's associated with fear. And we are, going through a stage in history where there is a lot of fear around. And I'm just wondering how that can be turned around, that we could generate more creativity than fear.
Oh, I wish we had the answer to that one.
Well, maybe we'll touch on that in our next conversation, because hopefully this won't be the last word on creativity. Hopefully you'll be up for talking again about this subject soon.